I think someone muted everybody. Welcome. I'm really excited to welcome you all here this evening. Tonight is really an opportunity for me to talk with you about the planning for spring, and I hope you like the Maxi Priest in the springtime as we were coming in, and also to talk about some of the planning that's happening for the fall at Gordon School. Things are changing not only at Gordon, but in Rhode Island and around the country. It seems almost every day. And so, doing one of these town halls, you run the risk of a week later, much of what you say not being relevant or changing. But I did think, even with unanswered questions that we still have about what the spring, some things in the spring and fall may look like, the leadership team felt it was a good idea for us all to get together tonight, and I really thank you for making the time to come out. One thing I want to share with you is that my glasses that I'm wearing tonight are my progressives, not my computer glasses. So I'm not looking down on you when I do this. I'm just trying to see the screen and my notes. So just wanted to let you know that. So let's go ahead and get started. So I wanted to first just start with a thank you. This has been a year that has been like no other, and I've said that a lot because it's true. And I just want to thank you, parents and caregivers, for being the amazing partners that you've been throughout this year. Your partnership, your flexibility, your patience, your understanding, your honesty, your loving and critical feedback, all of those things have made it possible for us to be together on campus this fall, and also to be connected off campus for folks who, for students and families who have to be home, for parents who can't be in the building. We've all worked really hard to try and stay connected during a time where it's really challenging to do that. And you all have been the glue in so many ways. And you've endured frustrations and fears, and safety apps and quarantining and extra days off on the calendar. And in the midst of all that you're dealing with at home or in your jobs or in your families in the midst of this crisis. So I just want to thank you for who you are and who you've been this year. And I know we have faculty and staff who are with us tonight, and I absolutely want to thank them. If you know how to use an emoji, please give them a hand or a heart. I thank you for all that you've done as well for our students this year. We appreciate you. I also wanted to just set a context for us a little bit. A friend of mine who's an assistant head of school in Baltimore reached out to educators of color, I think just last week, and asked us to just share with her a word that described how we were feeling right now. And she put that all the words together in a word cloud. And this is what it looked like in terms of the number of responses. You can see that one in the middle was definitely the one I shared. Because it's not only COVID that we're dealing with right now. As you saw in the message that I wrote to faculty and staff when the Derek Chauvin trial started, there's a lot happening in our world right now that is really hard emotionally and psychologically. And navigating that as we navigate daily life at Gordon School is challenging on some days, and joyful, so joyful in others. And this is us as well. We are having fun together. We're being vulnerable together in our conversations. We are navigating a new administration and coming out of an old one in the midst of a crisis, and doing that with our children. Springtime is coming. Generosity is coming, or is here and has been on Gordon's campus all year. And that's who we are and who we have been as well. And so I just keep saying, and I will keep saying, even though it is repetitive, thank you, thank you, thank you, because I don't think that gratitude is something that gets old. And so as we go through some of the harder times and continue to, I'm just grateful for some of the things you see on the screen and so many more in terms of what Gordon School has been for what we've been for each other. So our time together tonight, probably over the next hour and a half, is going to be a fairly simple agenda. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about where we are right now in terms of the country, Rhode Island, and Gordon School, in terms of planning for the spring. And I'll share a little bit about that, and then giving you a preview of the fall. And hopefully all of you were able to look over the letter from Lynn and Gabe and Marianne about some of the staffing switcheroos, we've been calling them, that are going to be coming up this fall. And we'll have time to talk about all the things that I'll be sharing with you tonight. And I'll stop along the way for questions. If you have questions while I'm talking, just drop them in the chat. We have members of our leadership team on the Zoom tonight. They'll answer as many questions as they can in the chat. And Claire Blackmer is on the Zoom as usual, helping me to answer questions that come up as well. So please, I hope you'll feel engaged and connected tonight as we go through this conversation. So I'll start with where we are now, and I just wanted to share a couple of things about some of the guidelines that have been coming our way just this week about revisions to the playbook and guidelines for schools, as well as things that are coming to us from the Department of Health. So we are in an interesting moment. I mentioned kind of moving from one administration to another, and the reason is because of the role of the CDC from one administration to the other. I believe I either did a video or wrote to you all about how earlier in this crisis it was hard to figure out if the things that were coming from the CDC were as reliable as they had been in the past. There seemed to be some political calculations or pressures going into some of the things that were coming out publicly. And we were really leaning heavily on the Departments of Education and Health here in Rhode Island. Now the CDC feels, and it seems generally is acknowledged, that it is coming from a scientific a context or basis. And folks are feeling, and we're feeling at Gordon, that is more reliable guidance. I just wanted you all to know, though, when it comes to the things that Gordon has to do, those mandates come from the Rhode Island Departments of Health and Education. And sometimes they will say, follow the CDC guidance. But for CDC things around travel and others, those are their recommendations, and states may have something different, and we will always go by the state. Sorry about that. Another context for some of the things that I'm going to share is that an important goal of some of the revised guidelines from Rhode Island are to get as many students back in school in person as possible. This does not mean that the guidelines around distancing or buses that I'm going to be sharing are unsafe. That's not it at all. What it does mean is that the Department of Education asks schools, what are the things that are getting in the way of having students on campus in person? And so getting feedback and aligning that with health and safety protocols, you have some of the revised guidelines that have come our way. But I also want folks to remember it's not just what we know about the virus and what what the Department of Health is understanding about the virus now. There is an important push, because we know, and you all have experienced it firsthand in many ways, how important it is for children to be in person. That's especially I think relevant in public school situations where some families are relying on meals and special education students need to be in person. So that's just a context for revised guidelines that I wanted you all to keep in mind this evening. So some of the latest things coming our way, you may know about some of these. As I said, they just came to us this past week. But since our return for break, there has been a steady increase in positive student cases in K through 12 schools. You all also know we're in what they call this race between variants and vaccinations, and schools have seen this increase, and it's worrisome. Rideout is now following actually Gordon's protocols that we've been following, or we created and have been following since the beginning of the year. Now household contacts of a probable case have to quarantine pending results for the person in the household who's getting tested. So that's new for Rideout, but not new for Gordon's school. A big thing that they have shared with us is that allergy season is here, and if you have symptoms, not assuming that it's allergies. There are only 2 symptoms that are exclusive to allergies and don't overlap with COVID. I believe it's watery eyes and sneezing. Everything else lines up with COVID. It's important to get tested if you are symptomatic. And it's important because if you don't and you become positive, that impacts a whole bunch of people at Gordon School in terms of quarantining. So it's annoying, but there are some guidelines around allergies and doctors' recommendations, and Sandy can help you with that if your child is prone to allergies during this season. Temperature checks are now no longer recommended as a school screening device or practice. And as far as that's concerned with Gordon and our safety app, we'll still keep it. One of the reasons that temperature checks are being taken off the list for schools is that they're burdensome. If a school doesn't have the capacity to screen and test, get temperature checks for every child as they come into the building, that could keep students at home. So all of the other things, and you'll see on the next slide that we've been doing, are staying in place. Temperature checks, we do them at home anyway. They're not something we get on campus. So we'll keep those in place. But did want to that a shift. And also, there's information about COVID and less focus on transfer of the virus through surfaces and more about ventilation and keeping and seeing it as a respiratory issue. And so that has implications for us in terms of sharing spaces and sharing equipment and sharing materials. I believe you all know about the new spacing requirements, 3 feet between students and including during meals, which is a good change, a welcome change for us, and down from the 14 feet to 7 feet between stable groups. And you'll see the other mitigating strategies that we've had in place continue, and the definition of a close contact has not changed. Transportation, we don't have so many children on buses, but just so you know that the capacity on buses has increased. Students can sit with others outside of their household. That has implications for us around carpooling. And it's just an understanding that we're balancing kind of risk and reward. The number of possible close contacts increases as you increase children on buses, and the state is balancing that risk against the risk of keeping children at home. This is important for us because this idea has been coming up of understanding that children may need to be in multiple pods over the course of a school day. They could have their bus pod, they could have their school day pod, they could have their after school and athletic pod. That's something that we'll be exploring and listening out for, or seeing if that's something that may work for Gordon, because that could mean, again, some things could open up for children being in activities across different grade levels. Just an update on vaccinations as of last week, and I'm sure this number is up now this week. 28.1% of Rhode Islanders have been fully vaccinated. Approximately 89% of child care workers and educators. That's a really great number and encouraging number about vaccines. No statewide system for kind of percentages within a school or school district, but we do seem to have the numbers for public school educators, and so I think that's something that's really exciting. I know here at Gordon, when it opened up for educators, it was really a huge relief to be able to know that our faculty and staff would be able to be vaccinated, and we're choosing to do that. Speaking of choice, there is this question that has come up. It's not surprising. Will Gordon mandate vaccinations? Right now, we are focused on encouraging all of our faculty and staff to get vaccinated, making it easy for them to do that in terms of coverage or days out of school if they need to get vaccinated, or if they're getting side effects from a second dose, and feel like that's the right approach for spring. There are open questions about legalities of mandating vaccines. It looks like schools can be in a good place to mandate vaccines, but we won't know that yet. We need more direction from the state. We know that there's some universities that are doing it. We'll be interested in kind of legal implications there. Will there be differences between private and public schools and what we're able to do? Right now, it's not different. So we'll just be keeping our eye on that. And I just want to say that if there's a philosophical bent that Gordon School has, it's pro-vaccination. And we would want to encourage when it's available for students, when it's available for all adults in our state, I think it might be, that folks get vaccinated. In terms of all of this background and new information, vaccinations, understanding how the virus works, how it works in a school context, how it impacts children, and spread between children and adults. All of that new information has helped us think about what are some things that we could do to open up the spring a bit for our students. And some of the shifts you're aware of already. Grade levels are able to play outside together. We're able to share materials and playground equipment. We have cleaning and disinfecting protocols that are still in place, but we're able to have some more flexibility around sharing. Carpooling with students in different houses, different grade levels is back. Masking and windows open still, but happy that we can bring that convenience back to some families. Singing is back. That's a huge part of who we are as a school, and it's great to be able to get back to that practice and ritual. This is important. All of you have a faculty who teach across grade levels. For example, you may have a student who's taking Spanish, and that Spanish teacher may be teaching, for example, 5th grade and 6th grade in the same trimester. So because teachers cannot cross over grade levels, a teacher is teaching Spanish in person for one grade level and Zooming with another grade level. And when we have teachers fully vaccinated, they will be able to be in person with both grade levels, which will be nice to get folks like our music teachers and whatnot off, off Zoom and back in person with students. This is just reiterating kind of that example with Zoom, that we'll just have more flexibility with coverage and crossover coverage. And that means that we'll have less likely for the student experience to be impacted by staffing shortages, and also more relief for faculty who are doing a lot of coverage inside houses, and that's a short bench. And so the coverage bench is longer, and that should provide some relief for the day-to-day experience of faculty and staff. Because we can focus on ventilation, opening up shared spaces this year looks like a distinct possibility. The art rooms and music rooms, the library with Francis for our little ones, looking to open up that soon. Updating the safety app as we get guidelines for quarantine and travel for vaccinated people. And exploring the possibility of in-person gatherings for parents. We already are having meetups scheduled for in grade levels outside, just so you all can see and socialize in person in safe ways. And also as we go into our second round, or in our second round of admissions, looking at in-school tours. And this is important. It's hard for a family to make a decision about a school without being in it. And we've done a wonderful job with our admissions, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in the town hall. But we have a second round, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure families can see as much of Gordon and understand as much of our experience as possible. Other things that we're looking forward to as possibilities, as I talked about, the parent meetups, a spring musical, a field day in person for students in divisions, grade level exhibitions like our state expos, graduation, opening that up more, and maybe even civil rights trip. Lynn Bowman and Gabe Bernstein and I will be meeting with 8th grade families on Monday to talk about what this might look like. So things will, like I said, will always change and have the potential to always change and shift. But if we can keep on this present path, it does seem like there'll be some exciting things on the horizon, even before the fall. Okay, I'll pause here and ask if there are any questions.
Noni, if you're moving some papers, it's going on your mic and causing a fuzz out on us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Noni, Arav had his hand up earlier.
That was an accident. Thank you.
Oh. Okay. I am just checking out the chat.
Claire, did you see the question from Susan Regan? I answered it, but I think it might be good to do it live.
Yeah. If the state gives the authority to private schools to mandate vaccination for students and faculty, will Gordon do so?
If we can do so, I believe that we will. I mean, we do it already, right? Measles, it's a requirement to be vaccinated. The challenge is that legally there have to be accommodations. In Rhode Island and in other states, those accommodations can be reviewed if the vaccine is for a disease, a virus. That if you're currently in an outbreak, there may be a school may be able to say, we're not going to accept a religious exemption for COVID-19 vaccine because we're currently in an outbreak. So I would say that we already mandate vaccines. If the COVID, if the state said that we could, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. We would just need to know from our legal counsel and from the state and also federal regulations about what accommodations we would need to make from a medical and religious perspective.
And then Noni, I had added in the chat that we're not ready to mandate yet as states are rolling out the vaccine on their own priority list. So we're not looking to get in the way of that. And as we continue to wait for guidance from RIDA.
Yeah, I don't see us making a decision about that for the spring. We would be looking to see if that's something that we could do for the fall. Anything else before I move on? Okay, let's go. All right, so this time last year, we were getting ready, planning for the fall. And that went through the school year, through the summer, and right up till students walked on campus. And so we knew that things would be different with the fall, that vaccinations would shift things, understanding of the virus would shift things. But we couldn't wait until we had all the answers. And so we started to make some assumptions for planning purposes, particularly because they had implications for admissions, enrollment management, section sizes, et cetera. So back in March, some of the assumptions that we were working under was that adults would be vaccinated, and we were working on the assumption that children on campus would not, all the way through nursery through 8th grade. This meant that stable groups would need to continue, but we could have more flexibility and crossover teaching. We also thought that it would be important to review possibilities for athletic, music, band, after school. These are really important parts of our students' experience. And going through another year of not having those things as we normally do would be challenging. So trying to figure out how it would do that in the context of children still not being vaccinated. And of course, we had to get ready, as I said, for any staffing and structural implications of those assumptions. So now we have more information, and even what I'm sharing tonight may be different next week, but it's the best we've had, and this came to us from, as you can see on the bottom, the Departments of Health and RIDE. And this is just looking nationally of children across the country, and 3.34 million children have had COVID. And as we go into the fall, protecting children from infection, from illness, we have to consider the importance of herd immunity. Reaching herd immunity will require 70 to 85% of our population be immune, either because of vaccination or because they've had COVID. In the US right now, about 23% of our population are under the age of 18. So to get to that herd immunity number, we have to vaccinate. We have to have children vaccinated. So that's why I say that, if we can, mandate at Gordon, it's likely that we, very likely that we will, and we need community support in getting children vaccinated. And that means getting the education that folks need, the questions that folks need answered. We want to be partners with you and with the larger community in doing that. But this is, again, as with everything COVID related, we are in this together. I'm sure all of you know about the Pfizer and Moderna trials with children, and that Pfizer has secured emergency use authorization for their vaccine for 16 and under. It's been requested for ages 12 to 15 years old. And Moderna has got the FDA approval for 18 and up. So RIDE and RIDO believe that by fall there should be the vaccine supply to get children 12 to 17 years old vaccinated. Again, the question about supply is a good one, and the question about any vaccine hesitancy is important. Having the vaccine available is great, but it has to get in arms. And so making sure we have the supply and making sure that folks are committed to those vaccinations will help us get to that herd immunity. And there are things coming down the pike here, as you all have probably heard, with younger children. So there's some other factors that we've been thinking about, studies that we've been looking at and talking with our consulting physician about. An Israeli study has been very interesting to us about children in communities with vaccinated adults. It's demonstrated they have a low risk of contracting the virus. A more Gordon-specific factor that even in the height of spread in Rhode Island, we did not have spread of the virus here on campus. And we're looking at this kind of algorithm of low community spread in Rhode Island, vaccinated adults, having some children vaccinated, masking, ventilation, distancing, the testing, hand hygiene, all of that kind of continues to kind of push the risk of children contracting COVID in the school context and at Gordon in a very low place. Also, the information that we have about children, we know children can get it. We know that they can get sick from it. But in terms of percentages, the children who have gotten it have not gotten very sick, and that's what we've seen at Gordon. We want to keep an eye on that, of course. But just want to share all that, because if we are looking at a situation where adults are vaccinated at Gordon and most children are not, that does not mean that then there's a high risk of spread between children of the virus. So based on all of that, we made some new assumptions for the fall. And I wanted to delete this slide from the presentation, because having it, I think, made it look like there's this big buildup to here now all the things we're going to do or not do at Gordon School, and I don't have that slide for you. What I do have is just saying this, is that while we don't know exactly what the fall will look like, we do believe that we'll have more flexibility around student cohorting than we originally assumed, especially in middle school. We know that we're going to get twins, parents of twins. They're not going to be in the same class anymore. We know we're going to do that. As I said, thinking about what it could mean to have different pods of the school day. So having students being able to, play, 7th and 8th graders being able to play basketball, for example. Because if you look at that dynamic, and let's think about, let's just say a bus pod. And someone on that bus turns out to be positive. Well, of course, the children on the bus are close contacts. The students in the positives class are close contacts, but not the students in the classes of other students on the bus. So yes, it does kind of widen the number of close contacts, but again, we're balancing that risk against what we're hoping to do and getting some things back to normal. They will not be completely back to normal. I need to be clear about that. But our intention is where we can kind of make our way back there with state guidelines. We're going to try. What are some things that we may not get rid of? So we're thinking about the fact that we will have unvaccinated students on campus, it's likely that the safety app will need to continue. What those questions will be will most likely change. Also, if the school is going to be saying that some children can't be on campus because they need to quarantine or whatever the rules may be about symptoms, we can't separate them from their learning for a long time. So what those schedules will look like, kind of when they kick into gear in terms of days that students are absent, we do not have those questions now. But we know we need to have something for students if the school is the institution saying that a child can't be on campus. Gordon at home is still an open question for us and should be, I think, resolved well before the end of this school year. We have done our best to serve families, and it's been a challenge. And for us, that's our disappointment in not being able to serve families in the ways that we want to, in the ways that families need, being off campus for necessary reasons. So we need to think about what that looks like in the fall, because number one, we don't know what the numbers will be for those for families who may not come back to campus, and we want to make sure again that we're keeping in mind our service and our ability to serve families in this situation. Our campus operations working group and buildings and ground committee are exploring COVID changes we may want to remain, getting rid of water fountains. The New England word is bubbles, right, Tom? Tom said that's not his word. I just look for any opportunity to use it. But getting rid of water fountains, and it was interesting, folks were like, why would you ever have water fountains in a school? Good to know, good to discover. But having water bottle stations is something that we want to look at. All gender bathrooms is something that we want to think about and look forward to talking about as well. Knowing that we will need to have some single gender options on campus, but would the majority of our bathrooms be all gender, since we've had success this year with that. We also need to make decisions about adults in the building, the commons, drop-off, pickup, the gator path, all of that, and need to think about kind of what are our thresholds, going to be. What are the metrics that we are going to be looking at in order to say this thing stays and we're right, and this thing can now go. And that's some of the work that we'll be doing through the spring and the summer. So some COVID-related structural and staffing plans. So based on the decisions that we made about cohorting before new information came our way about vaccinations, et cetera, were that nursery and preschool would be split into two cohorts again. And we would have TA support in both grades, 2 in nursery and 1 in preschool. And that our current structure, some of you may know that we had planned to have an ongoing residency program that's been challenging with the current structure, and that would be on hold for another year. And this is going to remain in place, even with our understanding of some of the things that have changed since we first thought that we would need to do this. For spacing reasons in the middle school, all the middle school grades will be in 5th through 8th, will be in 3 sections for next school year. And those have the potential to go back to or turn to 2 sections in 2022-23. We don't think it's a bad thing next year in all of our divisions to have a little more space between students. I think you've all heard the really surprising numbers about flu this year and other illnesses. They're just in the basement. And so masking, distancing, screening, all of that means that we're just not making each other sick. We'll want to think about what are the things that are practices that we want to encourage and keep in place in order to keep those numbers, illness numbers, low. And having a year where we're in smaller sections will be helpful in that respect. So we're going forward with those structural and staffing shifts, even with some of the new information that we have. I have no idea why my slide's doing that. All right, so some of the structural and staffing shifts were related to COVID, and some of them are related to admissions and enrollment management. So some great news, 66 new students joining us in the fall, and hello again to new families who are joining us here. We're so excited about you joining the Gordon family. Our third year of increased enrollment, that's exciting as well. Our first round of admissions, 70% yield. That just means that 70% of students or families who got an offer from Gordon School said yes. So we're highly desired, which is really exciting. And we're moving into our second round of admissions now, and hope to keep those numbers up. 42% of our new students are students of color. And we had a 72% yield on offers to students of color. And I share that because I believe that number was at 64% the previous year. So we have had a significant increase on families of color saying yes to Gordon School. And that's really exciting. So some of the admissions related and structural staffing plans, as I said, you all received kind of our latest update on how things would look in different grade levels and different divisions next year. And just wanted to talk about a few of them. Kindergarten and third grade going to 3 sections. So we had a wonderful problem this year in these grades. Lots of demand, especially from siblings, meaning current families who are applying siblings to Gordon School, and families that had more than one child they were applying. And the flip side of increasing enrollment year over year is that you have fewer and fewer spaces. And so lots of demand, fewer spaces, that's a hard situation to be in. And one of the reasons that it's hard is because, one, new families may not be able to say yes to Gordon School if Gordon can only take one sibling and not another. And current families, we may have retention challenges if they're balancing children in different schools. So thinking about the families that we had accepted and students we would have accepted if we had the space in kindergarten and third grade, because we had so many great applications, we did choose to add those additional exceptions sections to allow for siblings to come in. A kindergarten would have been, if we stayed in 2 sections, we probably would have just had siblings of current families in our new kindergarten class. Opening that up allows us to have new families as well, and that's important for Gordon. Fourth grade is a little different in terms of its needs around gender, racial, and economic diversity in this class. A lot of children who identify as girls in this class are lower a percentage of students of color in this class, and needing a more diverse payer mix in this class. All were things that were necessary in this fourth grade. Great applicants in pipeline, and not as many as we hope for in the areas of gender, racial, and economic diversity. So expanding sections allows us to bring in great families and to get closer to the diversity that we need in the class. So the thing that has come up for people who know Gordon history is a question of we used to be a school that had 3 sections per grade, and we have strategically moved to 2. I think in the years previous to immediately previous to my arrival. So does all this growth mean that Gordon is going back to 3 sections per grade? In a word, no. The 3rd and 4th grades will return to 2 sections in middle school. Those sections grow anyway, so it's possible that when those grades move into middle school, they can be in 2 sections and still be at the number, the max that we have for sections in middle school. Kindergarten's a little different because of the makeup of the class, and that we're not expecting attrition through early childhood and lower school. This is probably the one class that will stay 3 sections as they move through. We've been calling them the bump class, but that's one class that will remain in 3 most likely if families don't leave over their time here at Gordon, and we're planning for that. Some of that planning means that you have interim faculty. Faculty who would help to staff 3 sections, like in 3rd and 4th, and then as those classes move on, those positions would leave. Okay. And this is just a note about the openings in the school right now that have been posted, that hiring committees have been formed for, and searches are underway. So please spread the word to your networks. Jeff's put some great stuff on social media that you can share, and those of you who have shared on social media, thank you. It's a great place for people to either see a possibility for themselves or to pass on to their networks. So it exponentially grows, and we appreciate that. And all of the job postings are on our website. It's important as you're sharing with your networks to understand our priorities for hiring for next year. Continuing to have a diverse faculty and staff at Gordon is important. Children and families need to see folks in the classroom that look like them. We need to have a school that reflects the diversity of our community, and that's a priority for us to be a place that teachers of color are interested in being. We're also looking at people who identify as men of color, especially in EC and lower school. Damon Ray and Nick Terry, they need some brothers in the teaching struggle. So thinking about that as a priority is important for us as well. And we're also looking for diversity of teaching experience. We are blessed at Gordon to have a very veteran faculty. I believe before COVID, no teachers at Gordon School, below step 9, and that's really a wonderful a cadre of teachers, of educators to have in our school. And a diversity of experience is important. It's important for us to have veteran teachers, mid-career teachers, early teachers, so that we're all learning from one another. And what we bring to the table has to do a lot with how long we have been teaching. And it's really important to us at Gordon, and we have a foundation of this in our past teaching residency program, is growing great teachers and growing great leaders, and having those great teachers and leaders be here at Gordon for many years, or move on to other schools and take the things that they've learned here and impact a whole other community of children and families and educators. So as you're passing through your networks, keeping in mind those priorities would be helpful to us. So a lot of the switcheroos that you saw and openings that we're looking for, I shared a little about interims and why those positions exist now and will not exist later. It's based on those sections that will exist now and then not exist at a later point. Increasing our academic and social emotional support. We have an examination of our academic support program as part of our strategic vision. We have worked with a consultant, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of my presentation, on a new schedule for Gordon School, and academic support came up in that conversation as well. And we also know that the social and emotional support of our students and families and faculty and staff have always been a high priority at Gordon, and it will be even more important as we're moving into this next phase of what it means to be in school in a pandemic. Even if everyone is vaccinated, we'll still be dealing with the residue of this experience, and making sure that we are staffed for that is important. So things like middle school deans, having now 2 learning support folks across early childhood and lower school speak into this. Judith Nyes has been incredible this year in terms of being able to give us extra hours, families support, ages and stages every month, and we're going to continue those increased hours with Judith into next year. And we're looking at what are ways that we can develop other structures and other people. How can we develop internal folks at Gordon to support the mentoring and professional development of new faculty and staff? Because we'll have a big influx of new folks, how will those folks be supported? And how will everyone, new and returning faculty, be supported in developing and continuing to deepen and develop capacity around social and emotional well-being. Art and music teachers, there's been questions, well, with the growing sections, do you need more art and music teachers? We don't need more teachers, we just need them for more time. And we have scheduled that as well, and are staffed up to offer our specials, even with the increased or expanded sections. And some of the switcheroos, they were just very strategic. We have folks who are thinking about their own development, how the things that they would like to do and explore at Gordon School. What are ways that we can support that? We can't always do that. We can't create new administrative positions, but what are the things that we can do to help people grow? Well, that could just mean expanding kind of some of the things that they're doing and passionate about. It could mean moving to a new grade and having a new team. And we also, with all those switcheroos, just wanted to make sure that we did have veteran teacher presence because we would be having so many new folks coming into the school. And lastly, and I'll end and open it up for questions, is just what I referred to in terms of the schedule. One of our biggest priorities in our strategic vision was designing a new academic schedule that really closely aligned with our mission, our philosophy, our pedagogical approach, and understanding that a schedule is a reflection of a school's values. And we wanted to make sure that our schedule reflected our values. So back in January, we worked with a consultant from Independent School management, and we're presented with 3 proposals for a new schedule, and we'll be working through the end of this school year and all of next year to, number 1, select the model that we want to go forward with, engage in the professional development and preparation to launch a new schedule across nursery through 8th grade for 2022-23. And these are some of the priorities that came up in that conversation. And interestingly enough, we have had the ability to pilot some of these things in middle school and across other grade levels. Middle school, if you know, green and white days already untied from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And that will continue into next year. So we get to continue to refine kind of that kind of approach. And also thinking about the embedded teachers, the specialists who were in classrooms this entire year. We needed them because of the coverage and the cohorting, and they were incredible additions to the classroom. What are ways to think in a different way about embedded faculty to increase and encourage interdisciplinary work? We've used the outside more than we have ever, and want to continue to deepen our work in outdoor and experiential education. So more to come in that respect, but wanted you all to know that that's a big a priority that will impact all parts of our school experience and operations, and that work will be engaging in next year with, again, a launch of the new schedule in 22-23. All right, I'm going to take a sip of water and stop talking and answer any questions that you all might have.
Noni, it's Claire. Hi. There was a question in the chat from Megan DeSanto, and I want to, it's a good question. In spite of all of the good things that have happened without, illnesses among kids and all that sort of thing, she wants to confirm that the school's goal is to eliminate the mask mandate when public health allows it.
So if the public health was to say we don't have to wear masks anymore, would we keep wearing masks? Is that the question?
Yeah, I believe so. It's like, the goal is not to just keep kids from getting colds in the wintertime, but to get rid of masks as a mandate.
Well, we're just going to follow what the state says. If they say that it's not, we were a school that did not wear masks before this pandemic. It has implications across relationship building, instruction, lots of implications. And so if the state says hallelujah, that we cannot wear masks anymore, then we would not be keeping them. The thing that I would want to keep in mind is, are there individuals who would choose to? That will be something interesting. I think that, a while ago, maybe not that long ago, but folks used to look at folks funny who are wearing masks on airplanes or in the airport, and I think more people are going to be choosing to do that. So that will be something interesting to see. Well, what does it mean for someone to make that choice in a school environment? Is that okay? That's an open question we haven't explored, but we wouldn't be looking to keep masks just to keep people from getting sick if the state said that that schools didn't have to do that.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. And Karen Eisenberg asks, what do we mean by an interim position? And how can we ensure that we will receive quality applicants if the position does not last beyond 1 year?
Thanks for that question. So I'll just use the example of 3rd grade or 4th grade. So 4th grade, we are adding a section. And when that class moves into the middle school, there will not be 3 sections anymore. They will go to 2. And 4th grade, it's not a great example because 3rd will be coming up and they'll still be in, but roll with me on this. If 3rd wasn't coming up as 3 sections, then 4th grade would be in 2 sections again. And so that teacher that was hired for that 1 year in 4th grade has an interim position, meaning that there's not an expectation that that person would be continuing on at Gordon School in a teaching capacity. Now, here's the reason that some people choose to take interim positions. Good people choose to do it. Some people want to be at Gordon School, and it's a foot in the door. They're hoping things would open up, and we have seen that things have opened up. One of the challenges also about opening up, though, is that we also have our hiring priorities. So folks who have come in as interim positions and hoping to continue, we really do want to have the opportunity to explore meeting our hiring priorities. If that's really challenging for us, we have great people who might want to continue on. Some people have just set up their life in ways where an interim position is actually pretty convenient. And great educators who are like, yes, I can teach for a year, get back into school, and then go on to the next thing that I'm going to do. So I think we've had in a year of having an interim person or people, we've had great experience with those. And even before COVID, we had, I would put it in quotes because it's kind of been a year-over-year thing, but Rebecca Garfield in middle school, because we knew that we were moving from a 3-section school to 2, we had kind of bumps that we had to deal with, and laid that out for a wonderful teacher who has joined us, and her family is here and continues to be with us because of our circumstances. So you just never know what's going to happen, and good people are interested in these kinds of roles.
Thank you. And a quick question from Beth Maloney. With the new schedule in 2022, and going forward, is it possible to ditch the 2 p.m. Friday dismissal?
That's on the table for our scheduling a conversation. I believe that that's something that will go. We had thought about doing it earlier, but we knew that we were going to have the scheduling consultation, so we wanted to just not feel like we were going to have to go back and forth, because we didn't know what would come out of the consultation. But it looks like that's in 23 that the 2 o'clock dismissal will go.
Sarah Funk Butler did add that when she was at Gordon way back in the Stone Age, as she puts it, Friday dismissals were noon. So two seems like really late in the day.
We've made progress. So 3:20 is on the horizon. I'm looking at the text. Did Teresa have a question? Or is that answered in the chat?
It wasn't answered, but I could just ask it again.
Thank you.
Currently, Gordon's a little more conservative about who's considered close contacts of a positive case and how long kids have to stay home. And with the spring and then the fall expanding the number of kids who could potentially be close contacts of each other, are you at all considering potentially revising those rules?
Yeah, we're always looking at the rules in the context of some of the things that you mentioned, Teresa, and also where is Rhode Island in things, and so we're not locking ourselves into anything in terms of the spring or the fall, and we'll always look to revise. Are we at a place now where we can move to a less conservative approach? And the quarantining is one of those things that's on the table for sure. Any others, Claire, or?
I just want to clarify, I've lost who put it up, but losing the 2 p.m. dismissal on Friday would mean that we would go to a later dismissal, not an earlier dismissal.
Not going back to 12.
We're not going back to noon. We're going later in the day.
Only forward motion. Other questions? I see that there are questions coming up around class size. I have to admit, for holding all the numbers about different divisions and what the max classes are is not in my memory banks. But if you're holding those specific questions, reach out to Veronica, Marianne, Gabe, Lynn. You can get those answered if they're not answered in the chat tonight, because we are, if they're not more questions, we're going to wrap up soon. But those are folks who can get you clarity on that. Folks are asking about outdoor time. We'll carry over. In terms of percentage, that's not something I have, in mind. What I do know is that we want to encourage and will encourage, and it's part of our strategic vision, that students are outside more. And we have been, wearing our, banner of being the first open air school proudly. And I think we have gone under some, engaged in some serious reflection on how often that's actually happening across grade levels and divisions. That needs to be consistent. It needs to be a constant. We need to make sure faculty feel supported in that in terms of their professional development. And so while I can't say what percentage will carry over, but we want it to. We had great success with outdoor classrooms and children learning outside, and want to make sure that's something that we don't lose as we move forward. And our schedule is supposed to be accommodating more of that.
Elizabeth Hopkins is asking if there was, prior to the pandemic, were there any workshops or regularly scheduled events or classes or other practices that targeted stress management, mindfulness practices, that sort of thing? And the social emotional curriculum, what has changed or will change in said programming since the onset of the pandemic?
Great. I see in my thread that Gabe Bernstein is in the house on parental leave, but here with us tonight. Gabe, are you up for talking about middle school?
I am.
Hi.
So there's a couple things, particularly in the schedule, that we baked in this year. In terms of longer recesses and longer lunchtime in particular, that we want to keep moving forward to give kids, more downtime and playtime in between their academic sections, and that's been wonderful. And that will continue.
I would just also add that in terms of just parent education, there are monthly ages and stages that the division directors host, along with our school psychologist, Judith Nyes, who focuses on what's going on developmentally, socially, emotionally, and academically with kids. And those are happening monthly now and will continue to occur.
Thanks, Lynn. And I saw that Marianne wrote in the chat about the lower school social and emotional curriculum. All right.
Sejal is wondering if you could share just a few more details about what we learned from the scheduling consultants. As working parents, any information that can be shared in advance would be great.
Is that about the school day? Just because it's connected to working outside of the home. Sejal, I just want to make sure I'm answering what you're asking. Are there certain things that you're wondering about in terms of the day-to-day schedule or the yearly calendar?
I think both, yes, if there's any detail.
So the scheduling for next year, we're talking about the daily calendar, not the yearly one. So thinking about how long class periods are. Obviously, we're looking to have more longer blocks for more interdisciplinary learning outside of the classroom, a deeper reflection time, which is important, and interdisciplinary projects. So looking at a schedule that moves from that very traditional 45-minute, 50-minute periods, moving to Lynn, I can't remember, 90-minute blocks and whatnot. I can't recall exactly, but 60-minute blocks, 90-minute blocks,
80,
already. So that's more of what the day-to-day is, Sejal, just thinking about what are the ways that we can open up our schedule, move out of that very traditional period kind of model, so that we can really live into our progressive pedagogy. Over the yearly calendar that says, like, days off and things like that's determined in, concert with our peer schools, and some things are, Gordon, things like Grand Friends Day and things like that. So some things we don't know because we don't know what our ability is going to be from a health and safety perspective. But the consultant's work was focused on the day-to-day schedule.
And the changes that we implement like across the school won't happen for another academic school year.
The day-to-day calendar, schedule is a 2022 launch.
Tony, I'm seeing that Maiden has asked a question that is a health and safety one. If all parents are vaccinated, is it okay to go on play dates with kids outside of Gordon?
If all parents are vaccinated. So this is what I'll say about that. I'm going through my kind of encyclopedia in my brain, and that's not in like the playbook or anything, so I can't answer that. And we don't kind of direct kind of what you do outside of school. We're just encouraging you to do what the state says to do. So social gatherings, what are the state's most recent guidelines around, social gatherings. We're not in the place anymore where you couldn't, for example, be with anyone outside of your household. So I would say that whatever you're doing, vaccinated or not, should be aligned with what the state is saying that you should do. I will say that the increase in children's cases has not been so connected to spread in schools. It's been connected to outside of school activities that children from different households are all doing together. So again, the state says that you can do that, and there are health and safety protocols around that. So Gordon's not saying don't do that, but just be aware of where things are happening, how spread is happening, and making good choices for your family in line with what the state guidelines are. There's a question about fully vaccinated adults in the building, and this is something that we are feeling positive about, but we just need to be thoughtful about how it happens. If we have folks, I see library is there, and your volunteering in the library has been a huge help to us over the years. Of course, we want you there. And just want to be careful about it, whatever's happening in terms of parents being on campus, that it feels equitable, that it doesn't feel like some folks are getting access to the building and other folks aren't. So we just want to be thoughtful about that. But we want to see you. We miss you. And the upcoming parent meetups aren't connected to vaccinations. You all, after you drop off kids, are forming little socially distant circles in the parking lot, and we're just going to kind of give you a more sanctioned space to continue that. And as for kind of who we allow in the building and not, that's still open. Great. Yep. Sports. There's a question in the chat just about how important athletics are. We absolutely 100% agree. And as I said, this idea about children being in multiple pods, I think, could get us back there. And we just want to make sure that if the state guidelines allow that, we see a path to athletics being more like they were in the past. Any other things I'm missing? Well, please know this is not the last conversation we have. My guess is that I will be in front of you in some shape or form, whether it's a town hall, whether it's a video, whether I'm writing to you to just keep you updated on where we are with all of this for the spring and what our plans are for the fall. Folks, as you can see on the leadership team, know a lot, are really responsive, and you're welcome to reach out to any of us with the questions that are still sticking with you following this conversation tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and let folks do dinner plans, family plans, all of those things, just to put your feet up for the rest of the night. And thank you so much for coming, for your questions, for your partnership, and for just making the time for this really important conversation this evening. You're deeply appreciated, and I look forward to seeing you. One thing I didn't mention is that I'm coming to you from New York. I'm here with Rodney and the boys, and we'll be here till Friday. So I won't see you at drop off and pick up this week, but I will be back at my place on the sidewalk, Stone Walk, next Monday. All right, my friends, thank you so much. You can unmute, you can say good night, and I will see you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Fun. Thank you so
Night.
much.
It's great
Bye,
seeing you.
everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Good night.
Bye, everyone.
Hi, Lucy.
Good night.
Good night.